My entitled sisters demanded that I let them rent out my vacation home for profit. So when I refused, their husbands broke in and are now facing charges. Happened today. My folks decided to host a barbecue because I guess that's what older people do. I declined because I really don't like my two sisters, their husbands or their kids. Wife and I are child-free. Mom then pressured the wife. Long story short, we went. By the time we arrived, there were about 20 people there. My sisters and their husbands were already solidly buzzed. Drunk really. My mom was spending 100% of her time trying to keep the nieces and nephews, ages 7 to 11, more or less under control. Though my dad had strategically retreated to the whirlpool part of the pool with small cooler full of beers, wife and I made small talk with miscellaneous people, ate food and had frozen margarita. Sisters/Bills took turns criticizing us for being late, not being in our swimsuits and screwing up the vibe. Whatever. Typical suburban summer get-together. About 45 minutes in, two of the kids ran at one of the neighbor guests who was standing next to the pool and pushed her in. She was at the pool steps, stumbled in but didn't fall, so only got half wet. She was clearly very unhappy about it, but she didn't make a scene, just went over to where the parents were, grabbed their towels, dried herself off and left. Sisters and Bills thought it was all great fun. A bit later I was standing a few feet away from the pool chatting away with someone, saw three of the kids running full tilt at me from the corner of my eye. Obviously I was next. Not that it's terribly difficult to outwit young kids, but I just jumped out of their way at the last second. All three of them ran straight into the pool at full speed. Most of the other guests, including my wife and me, started laughing, but their moms, who as I mentioned were pretty shit-faced, absolutely freaked out. Apparently two of the kids couldn't swim even though they were in swimsuits. Since I wasn't in swim gear, I stepped back from the pool and let other people fish the kids out. The kids were bawling their heads off like they'd lost a limb. At that point all hell broke loose. The four drunk parents were yelling at everyone in general, and me in particular, for nearly letting their kids drown, and also because two of the kids had been videoing the trick, using their parents' iPhones, which were now at the bottom of the pool. One of my Bills got into the pool to try to retrieve the phones, but his behind back made that impossible. No one else volunteered to help, unsurprising given that my sisters were still bitching at everyone. I told my sisters it was their job to watch their kids, and that if anything had happened to them, it would have been their responsibility, not mine. There were some pretty strong words on both sides. Wife and I left after the other Bill fell over and face-planted while yelling at us. So now they're saying I should have let the little shits knock me into the pool and have their fun and ruin my phone? So, Ida? Side note, Dad, of course, never got out of the whirlpool. Relevant comments? Thoughts from OP. I realized they're just kids and they were just having fun. The fact that though this was okay, is more of a reflection on their parents than them. Just wish we hadn't gone. So it's nice to see my folks and their neighbors, but I really don't like my sisters or their husbands. They don't hide their envy of us and they're just exhausting to be around. More about why OP doesn't care for some of his family. It's more of an oil and water sort of thing. I've never been close to my sisters. They're 8 and 10 years older than me. So I also don't have much in common with their husbands. They're okay guys, but I just don't give a crap about the things that are important to them and vice versa. I do know that the four of them are somewhat envious of our lifestyle. Both the sisters are stay-at-home moms. Both the husbands make good money. One makes noticeably more than I do, but both my wife and I have professional careers. We don't have kids and we're way more responsible with money. As a result, we have a lot more investments, etc., and we don't have to drive cars full of kid debris, and we take nice trips once or twice a year. It definitely grates on both sisters and by extension their husbands. So we get some petty behavior from them on an ongoing basis. Overall, neither my wife nor I enjoy their company, which is why I wanted to skip the get-together. Just not worth it to me. But my wife is a positive person and is usually happy to see them. Hopefully next time your wife won't feel guilted into going. That's probably the one positive thing that will come out of this. Wife is much more tolerant and forgiving than I am towards my siblings, but based on what she was saying on the way home, I think she's had it with them as well. Your dad sounds awesome. Yeah, my dad's very chill. He loves being around groups of people, used to be in sales, likes people to enjoy themselves, and is definitely enjoying life as a retiree. He and two other guys with him just sat there and watched the show. Mom's cool too, but the situation upset her. Kids okay? The kids are fine. By the time I left, they were inside watching TV. I think they're 7, 9, 10, 10, and 11. It was the middle three who played kamikaze with me. So I'm guessing the 11-year-old egged them on. She's usually the ringleader. You phrased the part about your parents hosting a BB oddly, so I had to shorten the post to fit in the character limit. My folks are gregarious and like to have people over. They have the classic great for entertaining house and are always coming up with a reason to get together. They'd wanted everyone to be at their place for the 4th of Foy, but one of my sisters and her family were on a vacation, so this was a fake 4th of July party complete with flags, red, white, and blue decorations, BD, a margarita machine, etc. Sparklers were promised to the kids. My nieces and nephews were the only kids there. All of the neighbors are older like my parents. OOP is voted not the a hole. Update post August 17th, 2023, almost 1 month later. First off, my folks tell me that my nieces and nephews are all good swimmers and that they use the pool all the time. The 7-year-old is still a beginner, but he loves the water. My sister just said they couldn't swim, so I'd look bad. To be fair, none of the kids are allowed in the deep end, which is where they fell in. It was the two 10-year-olds and the 9-year-old who tried to push me into the pool. After we left, the party ended on a pretty sour note. My drunk brother-in-law, who face-planted while yelling at me, had to go to an urgent care place and get his face stitched up. He was too toasted to drive, so Dad took him. Dad was very not happy about this. Late that evening, my sisters started a group text and said some really nasty crap. Their husbands threw in a few comments as well. Wife and I blocked the 4 of them. My mom called me. She was pretty upset about what they said. She and Dad were in the chat, and I don't blame her. Because of the texts, my folks insisted my sisters' bills come over the next day, Sunday, without their kids to get some things straight and lay down some ground rules, Mom's wording. The result was a contrite, if unenthusiastic apology from the siblings via my mom's phone. So I'm glad my wife was with me when they called. Her hard stares kept me from saying what I wanted to. I just told them thanks and that we felt no need to discuss it further. Since I thought things were settled, I unblocked them. That evening, I got a text from one of the bills telling me the phones cost $4 and asking when I'd be paying for them. Ref, I replied, never. Took a screenshot of his text and forwarded it to my folks with a note that we were done with this nonsense. We're going no contact with sisters, spouses, and not to invite us to any more holidays or get-togethers if they'll be present. Then I blocked the sisters and their spouses again. At that point, the shit really hit the fan. Dad called them and ripped them a new one. Among other things, he told them the grandkids were not welcome at his place indefinitely, since my mom regularly provides free babysitting that got them pretty rattled. He also banned them from using the vacation house and told them my wife and I actually own it, not he and Mom. This completely freaked them out. Both of my sisters' families use the place a lot, including having their friends up for weekend getaways. This was very much out of character for my folks. They'd clearly had it, and for reference, I never wanted my sisters to know we own the place. So we bought it for my folks. They'd always wanted a place in the mountains. Keeping the ownership quiet was just a way to avoid drama with my siblings. A couple of days later, my sisters and their husbands came to our place unannounced to apologize in person. We were out to dinner and they left a note. One sister also called me at work too. I sent her to voicemail. We've decided being no contact is the best thing for the indefinite future and haven't interacted with them for the last 3+ weeks. Personally, I'm done. They can go pound sand. Relevant comments. How life has been. It's been less than a month, but I have to say that blocking them has actually made our lives noticeably more peaceful. I hadn't realized how much ongoing low-level drama they create. It's not toxic, they're not bad people, they're just tiresome and petty. And I personally don't care about them using the weekend place. It's ours technically, but we bought it for my folks. They control it and decide who uses it when they aren't. We pay for all the operating costs and taxes. The one good thing about this blow-up is that we now know what we'll be doing with the property when my folks get older. I was prepared to take over managing it, allocating weekends, maintaining it and such, but now we know we'll just sell it, and if we want to go to the mountains, we'll just rent an Airbnb. To Loop's parents, yeah, my folks aren't dumb. They're pretty laid back though, very much live and let live. I figure they'll ease up on all of this soon, but that's their decision. We still won't be attending any family events for the foreseeable future. What sucks for my sisters is that they're probably very worried that I'll keep them from using the cabin. I won't. That's up to Mom and Dad until they are older. And it puts an end to one of the sisters' fantasy of building a compound of houses when we inherit the property, which I've known about for some time and had just ignored. So normal lots up there only have one area that can be built on, but this piece of property is way larger because it's at the end of a road. If at least 3 houses with great views could be placed on that land, they're no genuinely sorry, they just want things from you. I agree completely, their apologies aren't sincere, and I have no plans to interact with them anytime soon. Regarding them using the vacation home, that's really my parents' decision. Yes, technically I own it and cover all the expenses, but I bought it for them and gave them day-to-day control over it. They're good people and they always wanted a getaway place for the family, but there's no way they could have ever bought it themselves. I could afford to buy it for them because I've been fortunate financially, save invest like a demon plus. I got a massive bonus the same year I sold my home and moved in with my now wife. So I don't care if my folks let my siblings use the house, but I will admit I'm enjoying my sister's discomfort over finding out that I could afford to buy and let my folks use it while never mentioning it to them. Dad changed the lock code when they went up last week, so now only he, Mom, my wife, and I have it. With regards to Mom babysitting the kids, she tells me that once a week she and sometimes Dad have been going over to each sister's place and spending the day with the kids. So when school starts, she's going to pick each set up from school once a week on separate days and take them home, spend the evening with them. She says the 5 of them together stress her out, but separately they're fine. Mom and Dad have both told me they don't plan on having my sisters and their families back to their place in the foreseeable future, and that they're enjoying the quiet. My guess is that they were already tired of the old dynamic and used the pool party nonsense as an excuse to make some changes to the relationships. One fun note on why Oops' post was removed from IDA. According to the message I just read from the other sub's moderator, the violence, property damage, so I still don't get it. The phone's being ruined, I guess. Ridiculous. Update to the update, August 26th, 2023, 9 days from previous post. Well, it's been an interesting last few days. I thought the shit had hit the fan before, but it was more of a fart compared to what's happened this week. For this to make sense, I need to provide some financial context. My folks haven't ever been any good at saving money. I've been doing their taxes for years, so I know pretty much everything about them money-wise. Their house is paid for and they have minimal debt, but they didn't save much for retirement. Both of them get Social Security, Dad gets a solid pension and they have a bit of savings, but there's no treasure chest in the basement. I bought their current car for them after they retired a retirement present so they could have something nice to drive. It was the first car in probably 20 years they didn't lease. My sisters are convinced the folks are dripping with money and that our parents will be leaving the two of them everything since I don't need more money, so they've never cared about saving either. Turns out my oldest sister and her husband, they have 3 kids, have been living beyond their means for some time and are in financial straits. They've maxed out their credit cards and are behind on their car leases to the point that one is about to get repossessed. He'd bragged in the past about making X per year, but it turns out to be about half that. She confessed all this to Mom on Tuesday because they need a loan and because, and this was a weep moment for Mom and Dad, that for the last 3 years instead of staying at the vacation house regularly, she's actually been renting it out once a month or so and pocketing the cash. We're talking $2,000 plus for a weekend and at least $4,000 for a week. So with her being cut off from using the place, she's had to cancel one group already. She's now worried they'll lose everything. My folks aren't in any position to give them a loan. But my other sister was aware of her renting out the place, but of course hasn't ever said anything. I suspect she's done the same thing as well, because I went up there once to drop off an ATV I had worked on, and there was a family there who claimed to be staying there with my sister, her family, and that they'd gone to town for something. At the time I let it go, I figured she'd loaned out the house to some friends, but I've always wondered. Found all this out through my folks who are pretty stressed out about it. Mom more than Dad, he's mainly just pissed off about it all. I know Dad feels betrayed. And I imagine he's embarrassed that he's in no position to help his daughter out. He did reiterate that as long as it's up to him, the girls won't be using the vacation home anytime soon. Folks, let me know what's going on because they figured my sisters would put a full court press on me next. And they were right. On Thursday, my sisters came to our place again without husbands this time and waited outside the door until I got home. So I had to choose between fighting with them in public, them making a scene if I went in without them, or letting them in so I let them in. So I got a bullshit story from the older sister with the younger one backing her up regarding why I needed to let them use the mountain place again immediately. They also said I've been a shitty brother and that I needed to step up and plan on paying for their kids' college tuition since that's what family does. So I let them pitch their story, then called them out based on what my folks had told me. Things went to shit from there. There was denial, crying, cursing, yelling, you name it. So I swear my ears are still ringing 2 days later. Won't lie, I said some really mean and shitty things to them, but nothing that wasn't true. They finally left after about an hour. After that, I took a shower and laid down. So when I got up, my wife was home and her first words were that she'd had to block more phone numbers because my sisters were blowing up our phones from new ones. Folks messaged me yesterday asking me to call. I'm sure my sisters have told them some bullshit version of what happened, but I'm not up to rehashing it yet. I'm usually a pretty energetic person, but this drama has me beaten down. I had just enough energy today to drive up to the vacation house and padlock the entrance gate shut. I'm the only one with a key. I'm guessing that will be enough to ensure my siblings leave the place alone. They'd probably die to walk 400 yards uphill to get to the house. New updates from here. Update 3 post, September 12th, 2023, 2.5 weeks from last update. Yet another update regarding the cluster F that is my extended family. Thought it might be time given what's gone on over the past 2 weeks. After my sisters came to my place, my mom and dad told me they were done with managing the vacation home. Sounded like the sisters had been pressuring them to let them use the place again. Basically, my folks handed the responsibility for place over to me and told me it was my problem from here on out. Up until then, they'd kept track of who would be using it when, and they'd taken care of routine maintenance, replacing worn-out items, etc. In any case, they decided they didn't want to be in the middle of all this crap. For I don't blame them, I'm disappointed because the damn place was supposed to be something for them to enjoy and hang out in, and they use it regularly. Plus, I've never cared that they let my sisters and their families use it, because really I've always thought that was my parents' call even though I technically own it. But now my folks are going to be in the position of not having access without me being involved, and that changes the whole dynamic of place. I've taken several steps to secure the place. I already mentioned that I locked the gate. It has a heavy-duty chain and the best lock I could find. I also did a full reset on all the door keypads and created all new codes. Security cameras got installed yesterday, which is actually pretty cool because the installer convinced me to put a high-rise one that looks out over the alley. The system cost me way more than I thought it would, but the peace of mind is worth it. The installer also put up signs on the property saying the place was monitored by video. I also installed a heavy-duty lockout for the water shutoff drain valve. I hope to hell I don't lose the keys for it, because if I do, it's going to bear to get a right to remove. I haven't told anyone but my wife that the water is locked off, and again, only we have the keys. Last week I got separate calls at my office from both of the husbands trying to convince me to let them use the house like they always have. The older one had gone up with some friends for a guy's hangout but couldn't get in because of the gate lock, so he was pretty pissed and embarrassed about being locked out. I'm sure he would have broken the lock if he could have. During his call he kept bouncing between pushy and victimhood. At one point he threatened to rip that gate out of the goddamn ground. He also admitted they'd been renting it out to a few friends, that they needed the money, I was ruining their business, and that I should refund their guests' money. Me? Feth that. I should have recorded the conversation with him, but I don't know how to do that from an office phone anyway. The other bill just sounded like he was being made to call by my sister. He didn't really put up a fight when I told him not to plan on ever using the place again. In any case, I told them they can't use the place and not to ask again. At this point, I'm considering selling the vacation home. The wife and I won't use it enough to justify keeping it, and it's not like there's going to be any family get-togethers there anytime soon. I mentioned selling it to my folks. Their response was pretty much whatever. I'd more than double my money by selling it. The place consists of 3 lots with killer views and is at the end of a private road. But I'll probably wait for a while to sell. Doing so now would be an emotional decision. My sisters and I aren't currently speaking, and I have no plans to initiate contact. I don't know what the status between them and my folks is, and I don't want to. On the upside, we spent an evening with my folks last week, went to a new restaurant that was nice. No one brought up any of this crap. Mom did update us on the nieces and nephews. She's spending time with them at their homes. Sorry this update isn't full of laughs or owns, that's just life sometimes. Update post 4, October 16th, 2023, 1 month later. So a couple of people have asked for an update, here you go. I hired a guy to look over the vacation home. He lives in the area, takes care of his folks and manages a good number of properties. Some are vacation rentals, some are weekend places like ours. He has access to my camera feeds and does a physical check on the place every week or two. So I think he may have the best job in the mountains. He gets paid to drive around with his dog, walk around the properties and hangs out on people's decks whenever he feels like it. He also has a camera feed from a house near the start of the private road that takes still shots whenever a vehicle goes past it. $450 per month, plus he'll do basic maintenance and repairs on an hourly basis. So he's friends with all of the sheriff's deputies too. Got a lot of peace of mind from doing this, and he sends photos from his walks to everyone once or twice a week. I have to brag a bit on my parents. I got all this from them tonight at dinner, so they were getting pressure from my sisters to demand that I open up the vacation house to everyone for Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving up there had become quite the tradition for the family, not for me or my wife. We've gone once in 7 years. So my dad refused to bother me about it because he knew I'd say no. They came up with what I think is a great plan, announced that they were organizing the Thanksgiving gathering, and if everyone split the cost in advance, they'd rent an Airbnb in the mountains. Otherwise, they'd host Thanksgiving at their place, or one of the sisters could host it. This caused a fight between the sisters because the middle sister was all for doing the Airbnb, but the oldest one doesn't have any money. The deadline to commit to the Airbnb has passed. Looks like Thanksgiving will be at my parents' place. Regardless, we won't be there. My parents have asked that we not sell the place for now. They decided they'd still like to use it occasionally, but not until my sisters have come to terms with the new normal. And of course they'd probably like it if everyone could get together there again down the road. But that's just not going to happen. I'd just as soon sell it and move on at this point, but I can live with keeping it if my folks to use it now and again. Plus it will be worth even more down the road. Wife and I have stayed no contact with my sisters and their husbands. Both sisters have called from new numbers, few Google Voice, and left messages insisting that I meet with them for our parents' sake to work out how everyone can use the family vacation home. They called my wife too. I'm glad I was already in the habit of not answering calls if I don't recognize the number. I honestly don't know if they're delusional or if they think they can bully me into giving them access again. Don't really care. My parents tell me that the oldest sister and her husband are getting out of the leases for their SUV and big-ass truck and are selling their jet skis and some other shit they've never needed. So that's going to be really hard on her. She's quite the braggart and won't like being seen in something older, smaller, cheaper. Though my Bill's identity is very much wrapped up with his truck as well. He even has a small tattoo of the truck company's logo, which frankly is one of the many reasons why he and I never hung out. Several people have suggested I make the vacation home into an Airbnb. I don't plan to do so, at least anytime soon. I know it would make money, but it would cause an incredible amount of drama across the family and would stress out my parents. They don't need that. It would also be a hassle to remove personal things my folks have there. That stuff has nowhere to go. And there would be wear and tear on the place. And I'm sure it would take some amount of time on my part, even though I'd use a manager to do it. Just not worth it to me. Update post 5, November 27th, 2023, 1.5 months later. Wrote most of this yesterday, but decided to wait to post it until I wasn't so wound up. The waiting didn't work, I'm still wound up. Sorry if this rambles, so much has happened. Hard to write coherently. Things have gone to hell. I really truly did not think anything like this would happen. Short version, my brothers-in-law broke into my vacation home and were arrested. They'd been charged with breaking and entering, destruction of property and communicating threats, all Class 1 misdemeanors, so refused to drop the charges. I might do so if I'm fully paid for the damage they caused. They were still in jail as of Saturday evening. I assume they're out by now. Things had settled down, at least I thought so. Haven't seen or heard from my sisters in over 6 weeks. My parents went up to the house for a week and had a good time. David, the property manager I hired, has worked out great. He's done a couple of repairs I asked him to do, and I've given him a list that he's going to work on. He usually sends a photo or two of wildlife or a sunset to his clients every week, was kind of making me want to get up there. Friday after Thanksgiving, my bills went to my vacation home. They used an angle grinder to cut through the chain on the driveway gate and damage the gate in the process. So they tried to get in through the front door, ruined the lock set and gouged the door badly. They finally got in through the utility floor door and a locked internal door. They also broke into the barn, I'm not sure why. So when they went out through the front door, where they were met by sheriff's deputies and David gets notifications from the camera system when there's activity. He saw what was going on and called the sheriff's department. According to David, the Bills tried to bullshit their way out of it, but the deputies didn't buy it. For breaking into an empty house is a pretty serious thing up there. Usually it's meth heads who ransack the place and hawk everything. When the Bills were arrested, they freaked out big time, were saying how they were going to beat the hell out of me. Exene, so not smart to do in front of cops. David and the sheriff's office tried calling my wife and me to see what we wanted to do, but we were spending the day with her parents and had left our phones in the car so we could be in vacation mode. So they booked the Bills on everything, which is what I would have asked them to do anyway. Bills called their wives from jail, who of course freaked out. They called my folks, tried to call me, they're blocked. Tried to find a lawyer up there to arrange bail. Not easy to do given that it's a rural area and was a holiday weekend. Older sister has zero cash and her cards are maxed out, so if they made bail, my middle sister would have had to pay for both husbands. I know they were still in jail as of Saturday afternoon. We didn't check our phones until late Friday on the way home from the in-laws. So there were a ton of calls and messages from my mom, dad, David, and the sheriff's department. Talk about ruining a great day. I was in such a good mood till I looked at my phone. My wife read through the texts and listened to messages, read them out to me, and by the time we got home I had some idea of what was going on. I put my brain back into thinking mode, tried to get past my anger, failed. Called David and got the rundown on what had happened and how bad the damage was, resulting in more anger. I ended Friday by calling the sheriff's department and telling them there was no misunderstanding. The Bills had absolutely no right to be on my property and I wanted to press charges. So I didn't call my folks back. Barely slept. I waited until Saturday afternoon to call my folks. They were both pretty rattled about it all, my mom in particular. My sisters had browbeat them into telling me I should tell the cops it was all a mistake and that I wanted the charges dropped. I refused flat out, told them there was no way I'd do that until I spoke with an attorney, and also not until I was paid in full for whatever it will cost to fix everything 100%. My mom was crying hard by the time we got off the phone, which of course made me feel like shit. My dad suggested it was time for a complete start over, but also said he thought they needed to pay for the damage. I haven't gone up to the property yet. There's nothing I can do and I'll probably go nuts when I see the damage in person. The photos are bad enough. I'm hoping to tomorrow or Wednesday, but my job isn't one I can just wander off from for non-emergencies. So I've left messages with 2 attorney friends asking them to recommend the right lawyers to go after my sisters and Bills. I don't know what I can do exactly, but I'm hoping to get restraining orders. I have all the texts they've sent me, that might help. I'm strongly considering suing them for the money they made renting the place. I don't care about the cash, but it will help make them as miserable as possible. The gloves are definitely off at this point. A couple of side notes. 1. Bills had no idea I'd hired someone to keep an eye on things or that there are cameras there now. My parents knew but hadn't told them because they knew it would just give my sisters a reason to drama up. There are signs on the property stating it's being monitored with cameras and no trespassing signs though. 2. My wife has completely had it at this point. So I don't blame her, she's been more than patient about it all, but she reached her limit and was not shy about letting me know. She told me it's up to me how I deal with this, but that she thought they all needed to be taught a hard lesson. 3. Older Bill likely won't face any repercussions at his job over this, but Middle Bill has a security clearance, so he might. I'm hoping that will be motivation for Middle Bill to pay for the damages himself immediately. 4. David, the caretaker, has an interesting background. I knew he was friends with some of the deputies, figured it was because they were all locals. So I was wrong. He was a cop in a big city for years, was shot on duty, and afterwards decided to quit and move to where his parents had retired. So he has some PTSD over it all. His dog is a certified service animal and is usually with him. I know law enforcement people tend to hang together. I guess that's how they became his friend group. 5. I don't want to see or speak with these a-holes for the rest of my life. I know this is in direct conflict with my overwhelming urge to make their lives as miserable as possible. Relevant comment. So a lot of people have said I should have been hard-ass about all of this from day one. I've avoided it because it would have stressed out my parents, and I hate this kind of drama, but F it. They're stressed out now. My wife has pretty much opted out of any more to do with this, doesn't want to hear about it for a while, and says it's in my lap. She'll ease off on that, but I'm guessing she's not going to get involved from now on other than listening to me blow off steam. Did it? Regarding why they broke in, conjecture on my part, but I think they were planning on using it for family getaways and or renting it out again. According to David, the property manager, it's deer season through the end of the year. I know the Bills have used it in the past as base camp for big group hunting weeks. It sleeps quite a few people, so one event with friends could net them thousands of dollars. Again, I'm guessing here, but that would explain why they broke into the barn as well. I bought a 6-seater mule a few years back, and they would want use that. I don't think they wanted to trash the place. It means too much to my dad, and they both like him a lot. Update post 6, Dec 2nd, 2023, 5 days later. Dec 2nd, 2023, Saturday. Didn't think I'd be doing another post this soon, but a lot has happened over the past 2 days. Short version, I think the corner has been turned on this paint. Crap. Thursday afternoon, I got a courier-delivered envelope at my office. In it was a signed letter from both my brothers-in-law and a cashier's check for $5,000. In the letter, they made what I have to say was a really sincere apology. Among other things, they acknowledged breaking in, acknowledged it was wrong, said the $5,000 was to pay for the damage and that they'd pay more if it cost more than that. Also said they'd stay away from the vacation home unless my wife and I specifically invited them. They also asked that I do what could to get the charges dropped as soon as possible because they both could lose their jobs, and that they'd agree to a restraining order or whatever else it took for that to happen. There was more as well, all conciliatory, but that's the gist of it. To say this was a shock is an understatement. It was, obviously, a total 180 from their past behavior. I'd already made an appointment with an attorney to see about suing my Bills over the damage and to try to get a restraining order. So I called him and told him what I'd just received, and he agreed to meet with me at the end of the day instead of next week. Told me not to deposit the check. We met for about 2 hours. He ended up recommending the wife and I do a settlement and mutual release agreement with all 4 of them, sisters and Bills. He said if we went after them via a lawsuit that we'd almost certainly win, but that it could take 2 years or more, there would be sizable upfront legal fees and that we might never see any money. He also said we could keep the $5,000 free and clear even if we didn't let them off the hook. He's drawing up the agreement. It won't be ready until Monday. The agreement will include what's essentially the civil equivalent of a restraining order. So I'd already asked my property manager to work up a bid to get the damage repaired. I called him after the meeting and asked that he get me as close an estimate as possible ASAP. Got that Friday he thinks it will take around $4,000 to fix everything. Most of that is for the front door. On Friday, my attorney contacted each of the Bills, told them what we were proposing, and advised them to get their own lawyers. They both agreed to it. So the middle bill told them they could afford to either pay for the damages or pay for a lawyer, but not both, and they figured a lawyer wouldn't make any difference given that they really had no defense for what they did. His biggest concern was if the charges could be dropped. From what I can tell, they're willing to do anything, sign anything to make this all go away. My attorney also called the DA's office on Friday to discuss dismissing the charges, got the name of the prosecutor, and left them a message but has not spoken to them yet. He thinks they'll dismiss the charges because the Bills are paying up and they have no priors, but then again, he's not a criminal lawyer. He also said I should be prepared to drive up there Monday or Tuesday and tell the prosecutor in person that I want everything dismissed. He's also advised me to continue to be no contact with sisters and Bills, especially for the next 6 months, and that it will be really important to follow the terms of the agreement when it comes to future interactions with them. So I'm guessing that the Bills' change of heart is due to them having figured out what's at stake for them, what it's going to cost them in legal fees and fines and so on. There's also the highly unlikely possibility that they could go to jail for up to 120 days, and as I've mentioned, one of them has a security clearance for his job that could be at risk. So this is their Hail Mary pass to keep their normal lives. This isn't a perfect resolution to the situation, but at least it will get me the legal and financial parts of the shit show that I've been in for the past few months. I doubt I'll ever have a civil relationship with any of them ever again, and that's fine. What I want most at this point is to close this off, get on with my life, and never speak to any of them again. I'm exhausted from this. Wife feels pretty much the same way. Kind of a side issue, but getting the written apology was, weirdly, a huge moment for me. I wasn't expecting that ever, but apparently it matters to me quite a bit. The money doesn't feel particularly important at this moment, so I'll damn sure take it though. Also, I'm pretty certain my middle sister and her husband came up with the money. The cashier's check is from the credit union of the company he works for. Once things are signed, I plan to make one more update, probably just an edit to this post. I'm sorry for being so pedantic. Writing these posts has helped clear my head and the feedback has really helped. I truly appreciate everyone's comments, insights, and support. And I really hope none of you ever have to go this kind of nonsense. Relevant comment. To be honest, when I finally got home Thursday night, I cried from relief thinking this might all be over. I'm not going to discuss the settlement with my folks until it's signed by everyone. My sisters, Bills can if they want to, but I'm not. It's between me and them. Final update December 7th, 2023, 5 days later. Tuesday morning, I met with my attorney, went over the agreement, changed a couple of minor things, and he sent it to my sisters and brothers-in-law. It included a requirement that they pay my about $3,000. They weren't happy about that and tried to negotiate away, but he told them they either accept it as is or there would be no deal at all, and we'd proceed with suing them for the money they got from renting out the place. Wear and tear from renting it, repair costs from their break-in, emotional distress, lost income from having to deal with this, attorney fees and whatever else we could. He also told them I would push hard with the DA's office to prosecute every charge. Short version, they came in and signed. I wasn't there. I'm told it was a pretty tense environment, that the middle bill appeared to have taken charge, and that at one point he told both of my sisters to shut the hell up or he was walking away from the whole thing, making his own deal with us, and the rest of them could all go to hell. They provided another cashier's check for $2,500. Claimed that's all they had. So it's close enough that we're going to accept it as the final payment. Attorney also told me that everyone was very cold and curt towards one another, but that they all managed to keep it together long enough to sign and left without making too big of a scene. I drove up to the vacation house early yesterday to check out the damage and meet with the DA's office. Seeing the damage made my blood boil. It was so senseless. I was so pissed that I was ready to eat the cost of repairs and do everything I could to ruin their lives. Tried walking it off. Failed utterly. Ended up calling a good friend who was kind enough to stay on the phone for over an hour letting me spew and vent. So he eventually got me back to focusing on the bigger picture of putting this behind me and getting on with my life. Honestly, I'm still not sure that's what I want to do, but I settled down enough to get some food in me and I felt better. After lunch I went to DA's office. Hadn't made an appointment and had to wait a while, but got to meet with the assistant DA who's got the case. Short version is that since I don't want to prosecute and the Bills have already paid for the damages, that they are willing to drop all the charges except trespassing, which in this case will be a Class 2 misdemeanor. The Bills will have to plead guilty and pay whatever fine the judge sets. So I'm also told that if they fight the trespassing charge or ever so much as fart in public up there, that it would go very poorly for them. It helped that the Bills didn't resist arrest. If they had, none of the charges would have been dropped. So I also went by the sheriff's office to thank them for getting there so quickly and everything. I wanted to thank the deputies personally, but only spoke to the dispatch person. And I tried to meet up with David, the property manager, but couldn't get hold of him. A couple of notes: the agreement includes a no-contact clause. Basically, if any of them show up where my wife or I are, or the other way around, whoever got there last has to leave immediately. So no contact except through attorneys or other mutually agreed upon third parties. They get to keep whatever they made from renting the vacation house, my big give, unless I have tax consequences which they will be responsible for. And we release each other from all other liabilities up through the present. There's more to it than that, but those are the high points. Wife and I will sign the agreement later today. After that I can't talk about most of this, but I can talk around it. I think this is my final update regarding all this nonsense, but I'll respond to comments if I can. As I've said before, posting about all of this and reading folks' thoughts and responses has been really helpful and has probably been key in my being able to handle this in a relatively healthy way. So thank you all again. Relevant comments: I had a hard time not being vindictive, but right now I'm glad I wasn't. So if they cause more drama down the road, I'll probably regret it, but if they follow the agreement, that won't happen. The family dynamics are, like you said, pretty much effed. I've only told my parents that we're trying to work things out, nothing more. They may or may not be okay with the way things will be moving forward, but I had to do what was best for my wife and I. I'm guessing that my sisters have told them a very slanted version. That's just one more turd I'll have to swim around. So really the agreement is more a formalization of how things have been for the last few months. So I know it's not how my folks wanted things to go, but I'm pretty happy with it. Have your sisters ever shown this level of entitlement before? Not really. Not towards me anyway. We used to be okay, never very close, but not enemies. Looking back, they started to resent me when I bought a loft when I was 25. At that point, neither of them owned a home, but both had met their future husbands. They definitely didn't like that, got a place before they did. It got worse when I met my wife. They didn't like that. She was part of a wealthy family, especially since I was doing pretty well by then myself. They accused me of being elitist and such. When we got married, I moved in with my wife. Her condo was close to where she was doing her fellowship, and I sold the loft. Our wedding was fancy but reasonable, but the sisters were definitely envious about it. After that, they and their husbands got pretty petty, and we started minimizing our involvement with them. The profit from selling the loft, being frugal, and not having a house payment are what enabled me to buy the vacation home for my parents. My folks were okay with hiding the fact that I owned it instead of them because they knew my sisters would be bitchy about it and say that I was using my wife's money. I didn't. Most of our finances are separate, though it definitely helped that I didn't have a house payment. See, up until this crap started, I thought we were okay in the general sense. Our daily lives are very different, and I can't pretend I enjoy being around them for more than half a day, but I didn't think they hated me. I did know that both sisters had become pretty spoiled, entitled, but it wasn't my concern. And I didn't have any real conflicts with my brothers-in-law either, just almost nothing in common with them. I guess that's a long-winded way of saying I didn't know they were all such a shoals. So one last thought. My small fantasy at this point is that I never hear from them again. So next story, I discovered what really went down at my fiancée's bachelorette party. So I don't think I can marry her anymore. My fiancée is the love of my life. She's my ideal woman, and I wouldn't change a thing about her. But recently I had started feeling insecure about our relationship. I'm not proud to admit it, but I decided to snoop on her phone last night. While looking through her phone, I saw a notification go off. A message from her friends about the bachelorette party came in, so I started obsessing over it like a stalker from TV. So I stayed up all night checking her computer and Facebook messages and discovered she had cheated during the party. By cheating, I don't mean getting a strip tease or something, which I would be okay with. I understand it's a bachelorette party, but she actually gave a stripper some slop and ended up going home with another one that night. She has this other guy added on Facebook, but the chat merely consists of a message that says, "Had a good time and it was nice to meet you." The date goes back to the night of the bachelorette party. I have read the messages between her and her friends. They have a small group, and I found out what she'd done there. It all seems as if it was a one-time thing that happened, but I am a mess. I haven't slept all night, and she is headed for work in an hour. We were supposed to get married in 3 weeks. We were planning on buying a house together, having kids and growing old. I feel like I want to throw all of that out the window. I am sitting here smelling like liquor, feeling sloshed and depressed. Honestly, I just wanted to stomp her out. I left in the morning to take a smoke. So my head was still messed up, but other than this night, nothing I found indicated anything else. So I guess she wanted this to be her last night before settling down or something. I honestly don't know, and I don't care. When I was outside taking a smoke, about 15 to 20 minutes or something after I left, she had woken up. She noticed the drinks out and asked me what I had been up to. Basically came to give me a kiss and a hug. I followed through with it, but honestly felt empty doing it. I didn't want to give her any hints of what I knew. She asked why I'd been drinking and why I didn't come to sleep last night. I told her I was just having some nightmares, but everything was fine. I felt detached, like I was watching myself in the third person through a TV or something. She asked me if any stress was related to the marriage and the plans, and I just told her something along the lines of, "I love you. How can you be stressed about the best thing in your life?" She got herself ready and left for work, so I basically started packing my most important things. I called and cancelled the venue where we were supposed to be having the wedding. Apparently, they took 15% of the money for cancelling early because we were having such a big event. So I told them it's fine and I really don't care at this point. I also saved screenshots of everything and have taken them with me. Around 1 p.m. I called a taxi and went to stay at a hotel about 60 miles away from my city. I didn't leave any notes or pictures at home, I just left. I just needed the alone time in the hotel to think everything through and process what had happened. At around 3:30 p.m., my phone started getting spammed with calls from my ex-fiancée. I started getting calls and messages from her sister, her friends, her parents, my parents, and a few of our mutual friends. The only person I called back was my dad and my mom. I have huge trust in my parents. I basically spilled the beans and told them a nicer story about what happened. I asked my dad not to say anything, and also asked my mother not to say anything. I told them it's ended, it's over, and that I won't be getting married anymore. I also told them not to tell anyone about what I told them, so I didn't tell them exactly what happened, just that I found out she wasn't being loyal to me. I didn't think giving details would help anyway. Around 5 p.m. my dad calls me back and tells me that my ex-fiancée is completely hysterical and is basically broken down. Completely not understanding what is going on, I just told my dad not to intervene and that I need some alone time now. I basically just shut my phone down and I have been staying silent ever since. Her sister knew about what happened at the bachelorette party, and I have the texts to prove it. She even laughed about it and told her not to feel guilty because it was a bachelorette party and that women should just go all in on that night. I really feel like Neo in the Matrix dodging bullets in slow motion. However, instead of bullets, I have dodged a floozy wife and unwanted children. So with this wife's endless fights and tons of depression, I honestly feel a lot better knowing that my life will get better. Unfortunately, she has broken down and is begging me to take her back. So is her sister and her friends. They also came up with the worst excuse of what actually happened. I had this gut feeling that she was going to come up with an excuse of some sort. So I picked up the phone and the first thing I heard was a torn voice. I could hear she had been crying all day and was in a messed up state. She kept begging me to come back, that there was an explanation for everything, and that she loved me. She said I had misunderstood the entire situation. I told her to explain it to me right then and there. She said because I only saw a small part of the conversation that it's all been misunderstood, that I should come back home, and that I had made an irrational decision to leave. During the entire conversation, I was just giving really short, empty answers in a cold manner. After she told me it was all a misunderstanding, I told her to call me back in 10 minutes and to check Messenger. After I hung up, I sent her the entire conversation with a ton of screenshots. Not all of them, but most of the important ones. It didn't take 2 minutes for her to call back crying hysterically, saying she was sorry for everything, that she wanted to die rather than lose me. She said she was forced by her friends and her sister to have fun one last time, and that she needed to let all the energy out before stepping into a marriage for life. So I stayed silent. The more I didn't talk and just said okay, the more she was crying. She started telling me that I could sleep with other women if I wanted to get back at her, or that she would tell everyone about what she did so I could take her back. So I told her sleeping with other women was not something I needed because the moment I met her and started loving her, she was the only woman I wanted. I didn't need to meet or sleep with someone to know the best thing in my life was waiting at home. She kept begging and begging, so I just told her if she comes clean to her parents and her family, I would think about it. After that, she started saying something, but I just hung up. Suddenly, her father called me up and apologized for everything. He and his wife know what happened now, and he was so sorry for all of this. He told me he understood how I felt, and that he didn't raise his daughter to do that. His wife basically stole the phone from him and told me that her daughter had never been this destroyed before. I politely told her that I appreciated her opinion, and then I said, I have to go, goodbye. So my ex-fiancée calls me back and begs me again, saying she told her parents and also sent a text message to our mutual friends about what happened. She kept apologizing on the phone and I didn't say much. After some time, I just told her not to cry and that she shouldn't be apologizing because single women like herself are allowed to do these things, and I hope she finds Mr. Right. She starts crying even harder. My ex-fiancée is unable to breathe and hands the phone off to her sister. She grabbed the phone and said, "We told everyone what happened. Are you going to take her back?" And I only said I would think about it. She then tells me that her sister is turning into a dangerous situation of wanting to unalive herself because of all of this. The only thing I said after she told me that was, "It's a good thing you are close to her, so you can make sure she doesn't do that to herself. Maybe take her to a doctor or something." After this, I just hung up. My phone has been blowing up with messages from everyone and I don't plan on responding. I honestly feel a lot better right now, like I can move on.